Hey there and welcome. I am really glad you're with me today. I would like to invite you, when you watch this on the replay, to take a minute to like the video, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel, share the video with a friend. Doing all of those things does help my channel on YouTube, and it does help to make the videos more visible to other people who might be interested. So I'd really appreciate your help with that. Today, we are diving into that very popular question of, do the irides change? And if they do, what changes do we see? This is a really important question to ask because it's one that just shows us that there's a lot of misconceptions out there. There's a lot of old information that has not been updated. Let me rephrase that. There's a lot of old information out there, and many people have not updated their skills. They haven't kept up on the current research. And so we are going to be talking about the most current research today. We are going to be showing before and after photos of people who've had injuries and surgeries to show us, to prove what kinds of changes we can see. So I have the chat box open, and I would just encourage you to please drop comments there and to ask questions. I like to have a very engaged workshop. Okay, I'm sort of having trouble finding words today. That's really weird for me, as some of you well know. All righty. Let's all start with this. Just by a show of hands, how many of you have heard the owl story? You can use the raise hand icon in your control panel. How many of you have heard the owl story as it relates to iridology? Yeah? Okay. It seems like every iridologist out there tells the owl story. I'm going to tell the owl story, and then we're going to talk about it for a minute. The story goes that a little boy, he was about 11 years old, named Ignaz van Petzele in Hungary, somehow got his hand on what we think might have been an owl. Maybe it was a hawk. We don't know for sure. But he got his hands on a bird of prey, and the bird of prey had an injury. We think it was a broken wing. So this little boy captured this owl and took it home and nursed it back to health. He noticed in doing this that the owl had a black line in its iris. And as the owl healed, this line disappeared. Now, one of the big challenges we have with this story is that you would think that since that was in the early 1800s, that in the following nearly 200 years, some veterinarian technician working in a bird sanctuary where they take in ill birds that have had injuries, and they nurse them back to health, you'd think that somebody there would have been able to replicate this, wouldn't you? That they would see the same thing happening in birds all the time, but it's never been replicated. And so we need to understand that it was an 11-year-old boy. He did not have equipment to actually look closely at this bird's eye. I'm not sure how easy it is to catch an owl, if indeed it was an owl, but a lot of iridologists who have thought this through have begun to wonder if the story is actually true. What we do know is that whatever Ignaz thought he saw, it spurred his interest. He became a medical doctor, and he started studying human eyes. We do need to remember that the structure of an animal's iris, particularly a bird's iris, is very, very different from a human iris. And it's highly unlikely that you would see a breach in a bird's iris, period. And because the structure of a bird's iris compared to a human iris is so very different, we cannot extrapolate from a bird to a human. All right, so we're going to put the whole owl story to rest, and we're going to chalk it up to urban myth and leave it at that, still being grateful to Ignaz for the fact that he was one of the early pioneers in human iridology. And we do want to give him credit for that. So let's look at a human eye. This is my eye. This was a picture I took in March 2017. And I'm specifically directing you to look at this area, which is on the Ellen Tart Jensen map. This is where the arm shows up. I want you to take a really good look at this. Now, I've noted some of the tech aspects of that photo, and this is really important because changing the shutter speed, changing the f-stop, changing the ISO setting will change somewhat the appearance of the eye and may alter how an iris is assessed. This is one thing that a lot of people don't understand, is that you can create a before and after type of image just by messing with your camera settings. All right, so full disclosure here that all of my photos are not taken on the same settings. What I want you to look at is very particularly the structure of the fibers here, what these fibers right in here look like, okay? Because what you're seeing in this left eye is you're seeing some reflexives that are there already from 2017. There's a bit of a space in here with a tiny bit of shading. Notice the size of the pupil because that will also alter how these fibers appear. All right, then 2019, I had a tragic encounter with a patch of ice, broke my wrist in 2 places. This is me at the hospital waiting to be seen. I managed to get home. That I was on my way to public transit, got home, and my husband and my daughter helped me change into out of my going to a business meeting clothes into, if they have to cut these clothes off, I don't care, clothes. And so this is what my wrist looked like as I was waiting. There is one of the breaks very clearly, and I don't know how to read x-rays. So somewhere in here, there is a second break because there were 2 breaks, one in here somewhere and one in here somewhere. And so this is me pre-surge, right? Pre-surge. And no, this couldn't have been pre-surge. Was this pre-surge? Just hang on. Yes, it was, because I asked my doctor for copies of my x-rays. That's how I got pre-surge. So you can see this grid here. They had tried to do an external reduction on it. And that grid pattern is the cast that they put on after they had done that external version, and it clearly didn't work quite well enough. So we ended up in surgery and and I'll show you those x-rays in a minute, with 2 metal plates and 12 screws in my wrist to hold the bones together so that it would heal. So this is my arm with my bowl of yogurt. That's all I could keep down right after surgery. My sausage fingers, they were so badly swollen, I could barely move them. In fact, I couldn't move them on their own. I literally had to take my other hand and stretch them out, and anything I could do to try to pump the fluid out of them. So I had presence of mind just a few days later. I should take pictures of my eyes. Now notice the different tech settings. This is important because notice how the eye looks much brighter than that first image we looked at. There are a lot of people who would call these before and afters, and they would make claims about cleansing and healing and all that kind of stuff. And that's garbage. That's bohunk. It's all about the tech changes. Look at these fibers again. So pupil is slightly larger, which is going to make these fibers slightly wavier. We have the very same reflexives, the very same little gap in between. Nothing has changed. Now, wouldn't you think that after having broken 2 bones, having a double surgery, 2 incisions, so that they could get into the bones properly, to insert 2 metal plates and 12 screws, wouldn't you think that if my eyes were going to change, they would have changed? What do you think? Based on the owl story, should we have seen changes in the irides? Yes or no? Yeah, you should have, right? But heavens, there's no change here. None at all. I mean, that was a huge trauma, not just the broken bones, but then the surgeries, right? And so, so there we have another view of that. Again, this is the day that 2 weeks after surgery, went in to get the cast changed, to get out of the surgical cast and get into a proper cast. And again, my doctor was good enough to snap photos of the computer screen so that I could have images of my arm. This is what my arm looks like. There's one of the incisions. The other incision is along the, oh my goodness, they've healed so well, healed so well. The other incision, I think, is along this side of my arm. You can see the incision, the dried blood. It's kind of disgusting, but it's healed beautifully. You can almost not see the incisions anymore. I think the hardest part of this was actually getting the staples removed. That just about made me up, Chuck. You know, just because they don't knock you out for that. And Jack says, may your arm be as strong as your hair. Okay, that's, sorry, that's Shanna. That's an inside joke. Shanna and Jack are a couple of my students, and I told them a funny story yesterday in our mentoring session. So April 2019. So this is just a few weeks later. Okay, we are seeing very same thing. So actually, this is a few weeks after surgery, we've got this very same lines, nothing different. So here we go, oldest to newest. So before all of the trauma, just a few days after the trauma, again, fibers are wavier because the pupil is larger. That compresses the iris tissue. The iris tissue does not telescope. It wrinkles. When it compresses, it wrinkles, just like fabric would wrinkle. If you had a piece of fabric on the table and you're starting to squish it, it would wrinkle. And then a few weeks later, when I'm sort of not on so many drugs anymore, I actually wasn't on any drugs. I took almost no painkillers. I didn't really feel much pain at all. And so this was just still wearing off the general anesthetic. This is a few weeks later, and you can see it looks like things have shifted again. Taking these photos on my own means I wasn't necessarily always completely on level. So we have to just understand that, you know, human frailties here. But there's no change, right? No change in that position, none whatsoever. So just to prove the theory, I'm kidding. I wasn't trying to prove anything here. On Mother's Day, the same year, so we're talking roughly 2 months after I broke my wrist, I fell down the stairs at my son's house. We'd gone there for Mother's Day, and I broke my olecranon. I didn't even know I had an olecranon until I broke it. Seriously, I had to look it up to find out what they were saying I'd broken. And so this is, I got to ER, and they did the x-ray. You know, with the wrist, they said, we're going to try to do the external reduction. We think we can. With this one, they said, no, you don't reduce this one externally. This requires surgery and hardware. Yeah, so here I am again, waiting in the ER. Broken arms are not high priority compared to, you know, breathing problems and heart problems, and I totally get that. So post-surge, I learned the huge benefit of surgical scrubs. They've got big necklines, they've got wide sleeves, and they've got lots of pockets. Seriously, the best pieces of clothing I've ever purchased for a specific reason. Jack is saying, ow, ow is right. I mean, so, oh my goodness. But okay, same arm, left arm, right? So we've done the wrist. Now we've done the elbow. And so this is again a week or so, 2 weeks after surgery, after the break in the surgery. And look at, it's exactly the same. Okay, now come on. If the irides were going to change because of a break or a surgery in the body, it should have showed up 3 breaks on the same arm, a double surgery and a single surgery on the same arm, all within 10 weeks. There should be something there, right? But there's not. Now, here's why. Here's why. And this is an important thing. The iris shows us our genetic inheritance. It does not show us situational changes. Again, notice the difference in the tech. And so this picture looks even more yellow than the other ones. So the tech is so important for assessing an eye photo, absolutely critical. But the breaks didn't change my genetic structure, right? I could not, if I had conceived a child after, when I was healing the first my broken wrists, or if I'd healed after I'd broken my elbow, that child would not have been born with a broken arm, would not have been born with an increased risk of breaking left wrist and left arm, right? It's not a genetic thing. And so that's why it doesn't show up in the iride. The irides show us our genetic potentials. They show us where our strengths and weaknesses are. That helps us to understand why we have certain symptoms, and it helps us to understand how we can support the body to reduce those symptoms and strengthen our functioning. The sclera, on the other hand, can show us changes, but they typically have to be very significant changes, and often they have to be sort of long-standing. So here's my wrist again. Here's my elbow. We now sport pins and wires, and I can actually feel this one when I lean on my elbow. It's kind of is annoying. They said I could get this removed, but because all of this happened right before COVID, and they said, when you've had this for a year, you can come back and talk to us about removing this piece of hardware. We were into COVID lockdowns, and you weren't getting anywhere near a hospital if you didn't have the jabs, and I did not have the jabs. And so I finally decided just to live with it. Jack is asking, did you see any changes in your sclera at the time? I did not. I looked at the sclera and I didn't even see a change there. And I think the reason for that is because in the grand scheme of things, the arm is not actually critical to the functioning of the body. And I don't think that the 10 weeks or the 8 weeks that it takes for a bone to initiate significant healing is enough time for the sclera to register a problem. You have the trauma, and then as soon as you've had the trauma, the body starts to repair it. Hopefully, if you've got the right nutrients and the right chemistry, your body starts to repair it. And I think that really is why I didn't see any changes in my sclera with the broken arm. So I just figured, just keep this up. So September, so a few months later, I thought I should just take pictures of my arm again. It looks just the same. Pictures of my arm. What am I saying? Pictures of my eye for the arm reaction field, right? And it's healed up. It's healed up beautifully. I had a fantastic physiotherapist, and we had just started to work on the wrist when I broke my elbow. And so we had to put my wrist therapy on hold for a few weeks. But then I actually started going back to see him as soon as I had the surgical cast off my elbow, because we could work on the wrist and he was able to start working on my arm. As he said, and I highly recommend, when you have a trauma like this, get yourself a really good physiotherapist. When he saw the second injury, he said, most people that break their elbow, just their elbow, only regain 70%. He said, and then you've got your wrist as well. We're going to be lucky if we get 50% extension and, even 50% of your strength back. And because he is such a good physio, he made me cry more than once, I will tell you. And he gave me exercises, which I did so faithfully, religiously. I mean, gold stars all over the place. I now have like 99% extension and about 90% strength. And I'm working on that. I continue to work on the strength because I want my left arm to be as strong as my right arm. So, I'm grateful for modern medicine. Where would I be without them for healing my arm, right? Now, and they've done what they do best, which is the emergency portion for the doctors and let's regain what we can for the physio, but now the rest of it's up to me. We're going to look at some more eyes in a minute, but I wanted to share this with you. This is from Danielle Mathieu. She's a naturopath and a reflexologist in Sherbrooke, Quebec. Lovely, lovely lady. She's one of my students, recently completed her coursework and now working towards certification. She said this: I completed my first iridology course several years ago. Since that time, I was looking for a teacher who could take me deeper into my knowledge and who would be available to his students and happy to be so, with whom it would be easy to exchange ideas, to feel comfortable asking questions, who would not fear different points of view, and who would be ready to take up the challenge of explaining their own. In short, the rare pearl. During this years, I took several mini classes with several teachers, but I could never decide to take a full course with any of them. There was always that little something missing that made me feel like I was in the right place with the right person. The moment I started talking with Judith, I immediately felt comfortable with her. Even though I had had no contact with her before, her welcome, her openness, and her professionalism made me feel that she was the teacher I'd been looking for all this time. All the fears I previously felt about other teachers vanished immediately, I felt no hesitation in getting involved with her. I have never regretted my choice, and my expectations were met far beyond what I expected from a teacher. She knows how to transmit to us the taste for excellence, and above all, she knows how to support us and train us to become the truly competent iridologists. Now, Danielle's first language is English, so this is a translation, is French rather. So this is her English translation of her French original. So if the grammar is a little bit unusual, that's okay. I've had many students where English was their second language, and they've done beautifully in the program. Just so you know who I am, some of you are quite new to me. So now that you've seen a case, we'll look at more cases in a moment. My name is Judith Cobb, obviously, and I am an IPA certified instructor, a level 3 certified instructor. I just checked the IPA website. I believe there are only 6 level 3 instructors in the world right now. And even though it looks like I've only been with them since 2022, they just started issuing badges in 2022. I've been an IPA certified instructor for many years and an IPA certified iridologist for many years, more than that. I've been a holistic health coach since 1981 and master herbalist, certified iridologist, nutritional consultant. So lots of training in lots of areas. And we pull in bits and pieces of all of that into the coursework that I do. And I encourage my students to draw on what they already know, to integrate it with iridology in order for iridology to be the very best tool for them. I'm a professional member of the Alberta Herbalist Association and also a member of the Canadian Association of Holistic Nutrition Professionals and the Canadian Association of Natural Nutritional Practitioners. What I love about these organizations is you have to prove your training, right? You can't just sign up and pay a fee and, hey, I'm a member. Well, you can, but it's not a professional membership then. At least with the Alberta Herbalist Association, you can just be a member at large. But I'm a professional member of all of these groups, which means I had to prove to them that I've done the training and that I know what I'm doing, because particularly with the 2 nutrition organizations, my affiliation with them allows me to issue receipts so that my clients are able to claim their consultations with me against their benefits packages from their employers. And so that's really something that the nutrition portion is recognized by many of the benefits packages that we have in Canada. All right, let's look at some more eyes. Trauma fork. This is a beautiful example of a trauma fork right here. A trauma fork tells us there has been some kind of a significant impact to a part of the body. The trauma fork tells us where the impact was. It doesn't tell us what the impact was. In this case, this was a young lady. She's been a client of mine since before she was born, because I started taking care of her parents about 5 years before this young lady came into the world. And she was in grade 12 in high school, and some young man thought it would be really funny to hit her on the head with a hardcover textbook. And he did. He hit her on the front corner of her head, gave her a very serious concussion, nearly took her out of school that year. She needed to have proctors and readers to do her exams, had to have all kinds of accommodations, so that it's really important to know that it showed up. I don't have photos from before this with her, but after it, this is taken just a few weeks after. Her mom is really, really smart, took her to the concussion center here in Calgary to get the best medical treatment. And when this girl was stable enough to be able to walk without losing her balance and stable enough to be out in bright light, her mom brought her to me and said, what else can we do? And so that's when we snapped these photos. I like what Jenna says here in comments. Good to know. She's talking about the insurance receipts. Thank you for sharing that tidbit about how we can qualify to have our clients be able to claim our services through their insurance. Yeah, and not all insurance packages have the nutrition coverage, but many of them do. So back to our trauma fork. This would have come up after the head impact. Now, the brain is a really important organ, far more important than your arm. You can survive without your arm, but you really, well, okay, I'm going to be sarcastic. Some people seem to survive without a brain just fine, but most people can't survive without a brain because it runs the body, right? And so I think that's why this showed up relatively quickly. And she has since moved to about 2,000 miles away, so I can't get updated photos of her. But the fact of the matter is, she had this trauma fork. Here's another example of a trauma fork, right? And again, this one, because it's coming, we come right down from the middle of that, the Y connector here. That's just at the edge of the brain area. So this would suggest a head impact again. And so this is where we would ask the question, do you remember having any kind of a head impact? It could have been falling and hitting your head, being hit in the head by something. It could have been a sports injury. It could have been a lot of reasons for a head impact. And so when we see this, we know that this is one of the changes we can see, that this will come up. Now, again, this is a client who has moved away, so I don't have updated photos of her. It would be interesting to see if, with doing a lot of focused brain work, if we could backtrack this. And the theory is we can. I have not personally seen it. This is a surgery. This is a young man who, at the age of about 22, developed a hernia. Now, it was an abdominal hernia, and it was a serious thing because at the time he worked at a big box hardware store in the appliance department. And so he had to move heavy appliances, which as soon as this hernia developed, he was put on modified activities at work, which was putting his employment in jeopardy. Right. And so that was not good. So before the surgery, we snapped photos of his eyes. And if we were to say, where should we see something in this right iris that is telling us about abdominal wall, we would probably expect to see something over here. Okay, so we've got some different fibers running through here, which, we understand what that means when we get into things quite deeply. But then just a week or so after he'd had the surgery, so they did it laparoscopically as much as they could and inserted the mesh and stitched him back up. But again, we're not seeing any difference. Notice the difference in pupil size, different cameras, different lighting. So that's going to alter the colors we see. And it can have an impact on the pupil size. This light is a much gentler light, which allows the pupils to stay larger, stay their original size. So that's a part of why his pupils are large, but also the fact that this is a few days after surgery and he's still coming down off the anesthetic, but now he's also taking painkillers, right? And so that's going to affect the nervous system. That's going to affect the pupil size. So these lines appear a little more prominent because, again, they're condensed, so they're easier to see by a bit, but we don't see any indication of surgery here. There's no breach in the iris fiber, right? His abdomen is healed up beautifully, so there's no concerns there. Here we have the eye of a man who, at the age of 39, was diagnosed with colorectal cancer. And we can see this would be the part of the eye that would show the risk. This bit of pigment shows an increased risk in that direction. It's not a diagnostic thing. We can't say this means he has colorectal cancer, but this actually suggests that the liver wants to be very cranky and that there may be an increased risk of some form of cancer. So this was taken about 3 years prior to the diagnosis. And about 2 years prior to the diagnosis, it still looks pretty much the same. Again, notice different lighting. So that accounts a little bit for some of the differences we see here. And then we have 6 weeks post-surgery. These photos were taken on the same day as each other, but with different lighting. I wanted you to see, so no difference in here. We see no indication that he's had that lower third of his colon removed, right? And so again, I believe they did it laparoscopically. But you see the difference in color. That is because of the difference in the lighting. There are many people who would talk about cleansing and healing and how that makes a difference. And I'm just telling you, don't buy into that. Always double check. Is it the same camera, the same lighting, on the same technical settings? Those are the most basic things that we need to pay attention to when we're talking about doing a before and after comparison. So I admit that we've got different lights here, but that was in on purpose to show you from here to here. Again, we've got different lighting, and we can see that because the actual light is a different size, right? And then when we get to here, this is the same lighting we had in the right-hand image on the previous page. This is different lighting. And so just showing you that that makes such a difference, but we're not seeing a difference in the tissues of the eye. Is this making sense? Is this helping to clarify why the owl story, number one, is inaccurate, and number two, can't be extrapolated to humans? If it's making sense, give me makes sense in the comments box. Yeah, making sense? Yeah, yeah. You're going to see a lot of people who are using photos that are not the same camera, not the same lighting setup, not the same camera specs, and they're going to be doing before and after photos. And when you listen to what they're saying, 9 times out of 10, they're using it to try to sell product. And I personally, and I'm not naming any names there, I'm just saying you've seen them. You know who I'm talking about. I personally think that is really unscrupulous, because to the unsuspecting public who doesn't understand the value of technical accuracy in doing a study or a case, they're going to buy into it. And they're going to be very disappointed when they don't get the same results that they saw in those photos. So this is, I think we've got some more photos to maybe look at, maybe not, I don't know. We'll see in a moment. Just to introduce you to the idea of the dynamic iridology assessment system for health professionals. It is the only live, online, fully mentored course for people who are or who want to be holistic practitioners. The only qualifier I have is you have to have a college level anatomy and physiology course before you come into this class. Jack Stegman is saying best class I have ever taken. Thank you, Jack. She's taken a lot of classes too. Thank you so much for that. I truly appreciate that. The idea of the purpose of this class is not just to teach you iridology, not just to teach you what markings are, but to teach you how to integrate markings, how to understand, well, if I see this marking and this marking and this marking, that means I need to go in this direction. And to also then help you integrate whatever other modalities you already have. Maybe you've got nutrition training or herbology or essential oils, aromatherapy, or some other training. We've had physical therapists in the course. We've had registered dental hygienists in the course, certainly naturopaths and registered nurses and all kinds of people, massage therapists, licensed massage therapists. The idea here is to help you integrate what you already know into iridology so that you can use iridology as an assessment tool to more quickly and easily assess your clients and create logical, doable programs for your clients. What I've found in doing this is that that I have been able to retain clients for 4 decades. I've got clients that have been with me since the very early years of my business, right? Because of the way I work with them. I do not overwhelm them with information. I give them the information they need to get results. And then we build on that step by step over the years. Chan is saying, if you'd like a holistic education for holistic assessment, this class is for you. So good. Thank you for that, Chan. I really appreciate that too. I just need to clear my computer screen here for just a second. All righty. So again, we want to teach you how to, not just how to do iridology, but how to use it. I've actually had students come to me who've been certified as iridologists. They could identify the markings just fine, but they had no idea how to use them. They were not taught how to integrate it into what they did. Knowing how to identify markings is like taking your car to a mechanic and the mechanic goes, yep, I know exactly what's wrong with your car, but we don't fix cars here. We only tell you what's wrong. You're going to have to go to Jim down the street. He fixes cars. He doesn't know how to tell you what's wrong, but he fixes cars. So if you only know how to identify markings, you really are not able to give your clients the best information to help them move forward. You need to know how to use those markings and how to integrate that with other modalities to be able to coach your clients. Does that make sense? So just an invitation here. Our next course of dynamic iridology starts on April 11th. If you have that anatomy and physiology under your belt already and you're thinking, I want to know more about this course. I want to know how long it is. I want to know how long it's going to take every week to do the work. I want to know the tuition. I want to know the certification process. Book a time to speak with me. It's not a high pressure sales call. Think of it more like a campus tour where you're going to check things out. I'm going to check you out. You're going to check me out. We're going to decide if we can work together. That's the purpose of this, right? And that's the URL you're going to use to schedule that time, tinyurl.com/dynamic-iridology. Let me just pop that into the chat box. There we go. And we can talk about it and see if this is actually something that will take you where you want to go. And by the way, if you don't have anatomy and physiology under your belt and you need that information, shoot me a message in the chat box right now, because I can send you a link to the anatomy and physiology course that I recommend, right? I can help you get connected with that. One more testimonial from Sophia Perez Villar. You can read this one on the International Iridology Practitioners Association website. Sophia posted it there. She's one of my certified grads as well. She said, the commitment that Judith has for teaching is extraordinary, and the amount of support you get from the iridology course is fabulous. Now, Sophia is a medical herbalist, clinical herbalist, and she was already a certified iridologist through another school. She's practicing in Ireland. The material is very clear and thorough. The pace of the course is dynamic, but with enough time to integrate all the parts. As this was my second iridology course, I was not sure if the course would be an add-on, but it has exceeded my expectations. I've learned lots from the course material and classes, expanded previous knowledge, and gained more confidence. I can see now how this course has helped me to get better answers from my clients and to design an effective protocol in very little time. Highly recommended for beginners and advanced. So again, if that sounds of interest to you, take a minute, hop on over to that link, tinyurl.com/dynamic-iridology, and schedule a time to chat with me. So just before we wrap up today, questions. What questions do you have about anything we've covered today? Whether it's about those before and after photos where we talked about, how the irides don't change as a result of surgery or broken bones. Or maybe it's some general info about the course. Any final questions? Got a bit of a quiet group here today. It looks like nothing is coming in. Again, if you need the anatomy and physiology, reach out to me and I will connect you with a course. I don't even get paid commission for recommending the course. I don't teach the course, but it's an excellent course and I'm happy to connect you with it. And then we can, once you've got that under your belt, we can have a conversation about the iridology course. I hope you have an amazing, fabulous day. And I look forward to seeing so many of you in the Dynamic Iridology Facebook group. And I really look forward to speaking with you in a Zoom meeting to talk about your goals and your goals, how they could relate to including iridology into what you do, and to see if it's a good fit for you. I look forward to speaking with you soon. Make it a great day. Bye for now.